All right, I made a cut in the video. So today I would like to talk about brushstrokes and edges. So a few weeks ago, if you remember well, we had a conversation about brushes. I did show you how to create your own. And I told you that there was on my Discord channel a few brushes available for you that are just good to paint with. Some of you may have found it, some of you not, some of you may be wondering if they even exist. If you still don't have good Photoshop brushes to paint with, you can use my sets. Some of my sets are free, you can find them online, you can message me. I'm talking to my students right now. It's not an invitation for anyone on the internet to message me and ask me for free brushes, but as far as my students, I will give you access to some of my stuff with no problem. But so far, what I'd rather you doing instead of just downloading my set and using it, I'd rather have you getting used to the few brushes I recommend, and really there is like 5 of them. And then going all over the internet and finding your own brushes and the stuff that you like. And there are so many sets, so many artists who share the sets of brushes they use. And my own personal set, not the one I sell, but my personal set is full of brushes made by other people, other artists, to a point where I have to admit I don't even know what comes from who. So don't know if the stream is acting up, of course. But there are so many options, and I say that often, and I'm gonna say it again. Do not get used because you are a student of the arts. Do not get used to be provided with stuff. I'd rather see I can provide, of course, and I do, but I'd rather see you as my students. I'd rather see you seeking new stuff, finding what you like, what's appropriate for you, becoming autonomous, because I do think that one of the best things that led me to have the career I have is because most of the time I was left on my own with problems to solve. And I think that's one of the best, the most educative thing to face in your art career. That's like lesson 101. Anyway, today I want to share with you some of, and you see my students right now, you probably see yourself because I have you on the screen, but that's not what's happening on stream, by the way, your faces are not displayed. I'm going to share the screen on the internet now, and we can start talking about what I want to discuss today. I will fuck that up, I'm telling you. No, I did not. I shared the screen without messing it up. That's beautiful. That's almost a first for me. So the piece that you are looking at right now is a portrait of Elric of Melny-Bonnet, who is, we talked about him a little bit, and he comes back in my artwork often, and he also invites himself into my classes, like he's doing right now. And I finished this work yesterday during a stream at night, and it was a follow-up to something that I kind of started with my friend Dominic on a shared stream. I'm pretty sure you can find it if you are interested into looking at this. Dominic and I were just both painting and working on different pieces and chatting at the same time. This artwork is interesting because it caught me into something that I'm facing right now in my career and with my artwork that illustrates perfectly what I want to discuss with you. And it's the fact that this specific piece, was already sketched originally. The character, the pose was based with a 3D software. So the character is a painted and modified character that I first had in 3D. That saves a lot of time. And for a lot of work with clients, it's easier to, work with this because you can really create different type of poses. You can really generate a lot of things really quick that can give the client a very quick idea of where, as an artist, you want to go with the final piece. And I've been using that a lot for, it's kind of recent in my artwork, but I feel frustration. And a few weeks ago, some of you saw me going live and started to share this piece that I was painting live, and this piece is entirely, completely, fully painted, with absolutely no 3D, no photographs. There is a photo reference. I was looking at a photograph that I took as a reference, but there is not a hint of photograph in this piece. And the reason why I started doing this, it's because I found myself craving the painterly render, but also the painterly discovery and accident generator, however you want to call this. I found myself, so I keep looking up, but it's because I'm looking at my students. When I'm talking to you all upstairs. All my students are upstairs, on the balcony, private spot. And so I found myself very, very frustrated with sometimes a too sharp, too realistic, too clean approach that I get with 3D. And a lot of work that I realized I was doing when I was finishing this piece was trying to get away from 3D as much as I could because it was too clean. And I'm going to link this to what I want to tell you about brush strokes specifically. And I'm going to keep it simple today. I'm not going to go in every direction. Yeah, no, you know me. I'm going to go in every directions, but I'm going to keep it simple as much as I can. I should never start a class saying I'm not going to go in every directions when we all know that's exactly what's going to happen. So when I decided, okay, I'm going to go with more brush strokes, I really want to get to that painterly render in the work. What does it mean? Because it comes with rules, and to do this, I had to reconnect with a lot of my older artwork because I used to do that a lot more. I used to allow myself that freedom of not finishing things perfectly, not being sharp everywhere. And I guess it's kind of a professional deformation because I have so many clients who sometimes ask me to not be too sketchy because they want realism. Lately, I have kind of forgotten what it is to just appreciate the brushstrokes. And so what I'm about to just say is pretty much the only real thing I want you to understand and remember from all the things we are going to talk about today. The brushstrokes reveal the physical body movement of the artist. Once again, this simple statement contains so much, including some thoughts about AI art, quote unquote. Because one of the things that we appreciate when we look at paintings, when we look at artwork, is that sometimes we feel invited into the process of the artist. When you go to a museum and you look at a specific piece and you can see the brushstrokes, you can see what was done, the way it was done, and because a lot of painting work is kind of made to recreate an illusion of realness, a scene. It's very interesting for people who look at the artwork to be able to figure out a little bit how that illusion is created. There is that pleasure of looking behind the wall, I will say. Being invited to contemplate and see the process itself. And that, greeting everyone, Holy Heck, I did not know you also streamed on Twitch. Yes, I do. Hi, welcome. So with your brushstrokes as an artist, you tell us a bit more about yourself. You tell us things with your composition. You tell us things with the choices all the choices you make on how you are going to create that narrative system in your illustration or in your painting. And you tell us about yourself with your brushstrokes. I had a student a long time ago now. I was looking at his illustrations for my classes and I liked them. There was something weird with them. And usually when I say something is weird with something, it means it's intriguing and interesting. And what was weird is that there was a lot of brushstrokes everywhere. It was very, very vibrant, very all over the place. And shortly after a short conversation with that student, I realized that student could not help but having a shaky hand, very, very shaky. And so that brushwork was actually generated by a struggle. And in a way, it was so expressive that, the students thought that he had a big problem and that it was a limitation, and it was, I'm not going to deny that. That would be unfair to the students to say that having that shaky hand was not a problem for him. But it was also giving to his artwork some kind of, that little thing that made that it was him and nobody else doing this, and we could recognize it. So a lot of your personality, a lot of yourself as an artist is contained into your brushwork. That also means that your choice of brushes is part of that. That's why I always advise you to, even if I have like something like 1,000 brushes in my brush set, I use like 5 or 6 of them, and the rest is just here just in case for special situations. But most of the time, I work with always the same brushes because they are part of my identity. They are my tools. The same way you can get into the work of a guitarist. And the guitarist is using a specific guitar with a specific, what we call the tone, specific identity, and you also recognize that musician because of the tools that they use and the way they use it. So far, so good. There is a true importance in what I'm talking about right now. It is abstract when you think about it, but it is very real, and it's very necessary for you to not only understand it, but apply whatever the thinking process about this leads you to. So I have a bunch of artworks that I want to share with you. But again, before I do this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to tell you a few essential things. Second level of essential things. The first essential aspect of it is really the fact that through the brush strokes you express your own movement into the piece. That's one thing, and it comes with a lot of consequences. Not in a negative way, of course. And the second level of information that I want to give you are more about technicalities, what you can do with those brushstrokes. So I'm just going to name a few right now, and then we are going to dive into several pieces and look at them and look at what I do and why I do them. When we talk about composition, and you will see that a lot of things that I'm saying now reconnect to that class we had about composition earlier this semester. When you make a brush stroke, you give some direction automatically. It's a movement from you, from your body. That's why when people say that digital art is not like a hand drawing or hand painting, it's inaccurate. We do that movement, we have it, it's part of digital art. We do a lot of other stuff, of course, but we also do that. And the directions and the movement is connected to composition. Depending on that movement, that brush stroke, that movement, you give direction into the artwork. And I'm going to transition to sharing my screen right now so you can see what I'm talking about directly. When you look at this piece with Elric on it, you can already see, and I'm going to cover Elric with bright pink. You can already see that I am implying some kind of movement all over the place, some directions. And all these are all, when you look at it this way, or at least that's what I had in mind when I did it, they are all leading to this. This main character is mixed right now between him and his sword, all right? Because that's the story of Elric and Stormbringer, who are the strangest couple of dark fantasy, really. And so I wanted everything in the artwork to lead to this one way or another. And you will see how much it is connected to brush strokes, because when you start looking at it, you will see that those go down or up, but no matter what, they connect with the character. Same thing with this, they all frame that character. And whether we go up or down, that diagonal is once again leading to this. From here, you have the Chaos Star, because it's a symbol in the Elric novel as well, that is kind of exploding into something that is first structured, but it goes to some further shapes that are repeated but are not structured. I did this because I want this piece to also talk about brushstrokes and that thing that I was discussing with you at the beginning of this class, that I wanted to remind myself that I can still work with sharp characters, with sharp elements, whether I use some of my photograph in the work, whether I paint sharply, or whether I use 3D. I wanted to go back to what I was discussing, which is the transition back to the painting energy and the quality and the beauty of painting, because that's something that we do appreciate. And so those little, I'm sketching like I'm on the phone, those little arrows right there are transitioning to kind of the same shapes, but more chaos, like it exploded, if it makes sense. And I want to attract your attention to this one specifically, which is really, really not well painted or anything like this. But when you look at it from the distance, as it has a lot of quality. To me, at least to my eyes, this one looks good because it looks painterly, it looks not finished, but it's visually interesting because it talks about movements and brushstrokes and decision-making from the artist. And if instead I had made a very cold triangle, very boring, taking the selection and make a very cold, I don't know if cold is the word, but if I made this triangle this way, it will just not have the same quality. So in a way, it's more perfect, more perfectly done, more finished. but it's not as interesting to look at. For a long, long time, when I was using some photographic element in my image, I always say I don't need to make it look painterly because I don't want to fake it. I don't want to, if I'm using photograph, I'm cool with this. I'm not trying to hide my process, and I know how to paint. So I don't have anything to prove, and I don't have to hide. And I'm talking about this because 20 years ago, that was a real conversation about digital art. Using photographs, there was some people who somehow wanted to be purist about that and say that we should not use photograph in the work, whatever. This is dead now, and I'm glad it is. But the point I'm trying to make is that I thought that implying brushstrokes just to show painting in digital art was not necessary because digital art was what it was, and I did not want to fake traditional render. But then I did it anyway, applying some more traditional painting render in my work, for the simple reason that when I was not doing it, I missed that what I was discussing earlier, that need to express myself through movement and through brushstrokes. Am I making sense with this? So this artwork is that transition, that narrative transition. This artwork talks about Elric, Lord of Chaos, rivers of blood, demon swords. We can talk about all that. But it's also talking about my own working process. It's talking about that mix between chaos and organization of that chaos. And once it's too organized, it gets boring, so I create more chaos again. And there is that entire process through this image of, let's call it kind of chaos management. I wish that was my job. I wish I was a chaos manager or something. I kind of am. I'm a professor, so I'm kind of a chaos manager. No offense, you all on the balcony. The shapes, a lot of the shapes in this artwork are defined by the brushstrokes itself, including those little symbolic dragons. I always say I don't paint dragons, and look, I purposely avoided painting dragons while still painting dragons in the artwork. So you have those three little dragons, and if you follow the brushstrokes and the movement, the tails of the dragons are all pointing back at Elric. It's made on purpose. This is why brushstrokes can give directions. So anytime you follow the directions of the brushstrokes in this piece, or we go down and then we go back up to the character, we go down, we go back up to the character, we go down, we go back up, that explodes, that comes out of the character. So the character goes out, but everything brings it back to him with a game with verticals, diagonals. I'm not going to go for a full explanation of this artwork. But you see the idea, and you see how painterly things are. And that makes it interesting to look at. So for that, I need the right brushes. And again, this is a class, so I'm going to show you some of the brushes I used, so you get a clear idea of what I'm talking about. One of the brushes I used for this is this one, because I love how much it contains. It follows my movements, and I can give directions with it. If I was to keep painting here around like I did, I could do that and start to create those painterly directions, reduce the opacity if I want to. And what I'm doing right here is actually what I did in the piece. So I'm purposely pushing the render, the painterly render, with this. So in this artwork, you have the same dynamic that what I was explaining when I was talking about this piece. If you remember when we talked about this one, I was explaining that I like to mix, when I work on skin, I like to mix this kind of skin texture brush that I mix with softer brushes. you know, to both create the smoothness of skin and also keep the texture. I'm overdoing it right now, so you can see what I'm doing, but it's a bit present. Not enough on this one because I'm not doing that right now, but it's here a little bit. You can see those pixels right there of like different textures of the brushes I used. One of the reasons why I bring this piece again is because there is something very important about brush strokes. I wasn't obviously not done. I don't need to tell you that this piece is not finished, but I have a set of hair brushes. That sounds funny when I say it. That I use to paint hair. And hair, I had students talking about that, asking questions on my Discord server. Hair is a great way to talk about brush strokes because you must follow. Right now I have a conflict. Right now here, if we look into here right now specifically, we do have some kind of mistake. I have the back hair that like the brush strokes is going over the hair right now, and I don't like this. So I should go back in my brush strokes. I should go back and keep working with that movement. Because, and I'm going to show you the dumbest example, but if I was to paint this character and if I was to paint the hair like this, it makes no sense, right? Unless it's purposely a stylistic approach, which can be done and can be possible if that's part of, you know, the artist language, why not? But if I'm trying to get that kind of flow, that realism and that flow, I need to always be aware of the directions I take. All right? And so working on the hair is a lot about that. It's a lot about knowing what direction you take with your brush strokes. But what I'm doing on the hair right now, and what I'm saying is really important. In fact, after I say that, everything is almost said. It also matters when you paint things that are not as obvious as the hair. So on the face, for example, what you see in front of you right now is an explanation of the way I think when I paint on the face. And when I paint this, I'm not painting it like this, right? I'm painting it like this. I am following the movement of the face. That's a bit awkward when I say it, but that's the best way I can say it. It's almost like caressing the face. And everything that you paint, it's almost, think about it as if you were brushing it, you know? And so if you take, I remember saying those stuff in live drawing, and that was a bit embarrassing. I had, you know, that dude like posing and having that very serious face, and I'm like, you need to think about as if you are brushing the model, and the model was like, Bastia, and you are doing it again, shut up, you know. But when you take it from the hair and then you take it everywhere, you have to embrace the shapes of things. And that's what you see here. And again, I'm going to do it in front of you just with purposely pink so you see that contrast. But if I have to paint here, I will paint this way. You know, that's the movements I make. If I have to paint on the lips, I know how lips are made, so I will probably paint this way. If I'm going under the eyes, I'm going like this. If I'm, you know, I know the shapes of things. And so there is a connection, a direct connection between knowing the shapes of the object you paint and the tools that you use, the brushes that you use. And so in a way, even in your digital painting, you should benefit from your practice of live drawing. Because live drawing is a place where you learn this a lot. You learn that when you paint on a subject, you know the rib cage, so you are not going to paint the rib cage with that movement of brush strokes. You know that you should go with the ribs. You know that when you are painting around the arms, if you want some verticality, like there is a strong verticality right there, I can paint it like that, but I'm also very aware that I could paint it like that, like going around the arm. So no matter what direction you take, you should be aware of the shapes of things. And that comes with studying. So the quality of your brushwork is connected to the understanding of the shapes you paint. And then there are also things I do to highlight elements a bit. And this piece is interesting to discuss this because you see the early stage of me thinking about that. And I'm talking about areas here where you see me clarifying with a brushwork that is kind of same thing, embracing those shapes. I am framing the important elements in the image with my brushwork. This way, if I do that during the early stage of the painting process, it will still be here later, just a little bit. Not obvious, but it will be here. And depending on what I'm doing, I could make other decisions. I could frame this one with this kind of dynamic, for example, you know, and have that painting movement around the head also. But then it's kind of contradicts what I have done so far. So, you know, this is a thinking process, but that does not mean, that means exactly it. That means it's a thinking process. It means that it's not something you should just, you know, draw a circle and then paint the entire horse and not caring about it. Like every brush strokes you make, every line you draw, every brush strokes you make is one decision. It's a decision in your head and it's an expression on canvas. So there is that, like, you know, thinking process that is connected to a physical reaction that gives us a result. And every part is very important. What you are thinking, the way you are processing what you are doing, and the way you apply the things you are processing. The brush strokes are the result of that process. And when you paint a more complex piece, that thinking process is driving really fast and happening so much. Every fraction of a second, every brush strokes you make, it's happening again. So you cannot neglect it. You must not neglect that. I know there is a bit of intensity into what I'm saying right now, but the thing is, this is really an important topic for an artist. We have seen this one. I don't have much to say, other than you can also see the brushwork, the decision made. You see the same thing happening in the hair. You see the choices of brushes, and you see the dynamics that are present in there. You see that in my brushwork, I purposely apply a diagonal across the face. That is my way to highlight, by contrast and opposition, the scars on the face also. In the chat, I read, you just helped me understand one of my biggest problems. Thank you. You're very welcome. I hope it's helping everyone, because those are major things that you don't find video tutorials about this, you know. And so that diagonal of light and shadow is made as an opportunity for me to talk about this character that is really a contrast of light and dark with a terrible past, and I'm doing this, but that zone of shadows is in the opposite direction from the direction of the scar, for example. So it creates a contrast that is here on purpose. This piece, full of chaos as well. I could finish it, you know. I could go here and finish that. In a way, excuse my French, but what the hell is that, right? but isn't it pretty? You know what I mean? It's not finished, it's chaos, but doesn't it look good? Full of textures and colors and shapes and things to look at? I think it works. You see the character, you understand the shapes of the body, you zoom into the hand and you're like, what is this? What is this? You know, print this, put it in your living room and you have just a complete random abstract piece where nobody is going to say, oh yes, that's a hand holding a sword, but look at the image. It is, and it works. It works very well. Look at the ornament in the neck, the brush strokes that give directions. Look at the top, in the body, the way with just a few brush strokes, I suggest the muscle turning around the bones. Directions, organization, composition, framing of the character. It's all in there, and it's all contained in the brushstrokes. That leads me to something else that I want to discuss with you today, and it's edges. And obviously, the edges, and by edges I'm talking, just so you understand from the get-go what I'm talking about, I'm talking the edges of objects and of shapes. And you will see that some of them are very obvious and clear, places of very strong contrast, like the sharpness of that blade, for example. That's a strong, clear edge. But there are places where the edges are purposely a bit confused with the background, places where they are completely confused. So what am I doing with this? What are the rules? You know, can you just smudge every edge on your artwork to just try to make it look painterly? Absolutely not. It's not about just, you know, just to highlight what I'm saying. It is not about going to your artwork and doing that on every edge, you know, to just make it look painterly, because what you are going to do with this is that you are going to create just smoke. So you decide. You decide what edges should be sharp and what edges should be smooth and integrating the surrounding like you will be mixing actual paint on a canvas, right? And the way I make those decisions is connected to what I was saying in composition classes as well. It is, where do I want contrast? Where do I want things to stand out? That blade, considering all the things that is happening in the directions right there at the bottom of the image, if that blade did not have sharp edges, we will miss it. And because it's a blade, I want that sharpness. But because the character is also kind of coming out of the shadows and entering the light, I want places where the character mixes with the shadows and places where the character contrasts. And this image, this one is called By the Gallows. That's an older piece that I made. This image is also all about it. And you will see, you know that coat / dress / whatever, it has to have a limit, right? It has to have one, but we can't see it. We can only guess it. And I really wanted that symbolic of that character being somehow attached and connected to that shadow, because the piece is called By the Gallows, and it's really that moment of transition of bright life to the unknown shadow of death, really. And same thing, we have that same system that I like to use a lot. Part of the face is in the shadows, the other part is in the light. And you see some very clear, sharp sharp edges that are talking about that narrative right here of that contrast between light and shadow. So we have that. But we also have places where everything just blends and merges and kind of end up all being merged together. The rules are really, when does it serve my narrative? And I know it's a bit complicated and once again very abstract to think about how just your brushstrokes and the way you work on the edges into your work, how does it connect with a story, you know, with something that is to be told and not something that is to be seen or something that is to be understood or thought about. Remember that one thing that I say in composition class, contrasts attract the eye. So anytime you create a clean, sharp edge, you are going to attract the eyes of the viewer right there. Every time you create an edge that is soft and blurry and fading, the eyes goes by. It's almost as if when you create that, I say almost, but it's not almost, it is what it is. When you create that strong edge right there, what we obtain is a stopper. It stops your eye. That contrast stops your eye. When you look in places where the edge is not that strong, right there, for example, it is not stopping your eyes because it goes smoothly, it goes through. We don't have that strong edge. That's the way I like to think about it. And to be fair with you, I don't think about it at all. I don't. It's me sitting here explaining to you the way I think my brain works when I look into it. But I don't think about it. I don't paint thinking, oh, I'm going to have a strong edge here and not here. It kind of becomes a bit abstract. So this piece is interesting because it contains everything that I'm talking about. That's a piece I usually obviously use when I talk about color theory. It's a piece that I created after a conversation with a student of mine who was colorblind. This is the reason why of the color of the dress, the blindness of this character, and the primary colors on the plate. But today I wanted to look at this one with a completely different approach. I'm going to talk about random things, but that character is, first of all, very vertical, right? So that character is blind but stable, standing, proud. You know, the angle creates this. But through brushworks and brushstrokes, I painted this very strong diagonal right there, you know, and that movement in the back. And so that movement in diagonal, by contrast, is reinforcing even more the horizontalities of this character. So I'm using the movement in my brushstroke to affirm even more something that I already wanted strong. Then, by complete intuition, not even thinking about it, when I painted this, I wanted those brushstrokes to lead, you know, so the clothes is leading, it's taking that direction, and it's leading to this, to that other horizontality to go back up to this. But all that is brush strokes and movement and directions. It also features edges. It's also a strong demonstration about edges, because clearly my intent when I show you this work is not to have you look here or here or here or here. Here, places where edges are not even a thing, they are not present. It's completely soft and smooth and fading. So the places where I use edges are here and here, here and here. Places of contrast. Places where I want you to focus. Still making sense? Still clear? What's interesting is once you take that piece that I have, and yes, I summon the power of the pink stars to save my content from being banned and, this painting of the model that then later I used into the piece I'm sharing with you, this painting features all that again, all the things I just talked about. From the neck that is painted in a complete different dynamic with those lines that you see, and then this one coming from here to here, going down right there. You see that? Completely different dynamic than the dynamic here. Where I actually go with the shape. And we go back to what I was explaining earlier, once again. Then you look in the hair. And the question of how do I paint hair? Well, hair are brush strokes. Just brush. Keep brushing. In what direction will you brush it? Think about a cat. In what direction do you brush a cat if you don't want to die? You have to go with the direction, right? Or else you are going to get first mewed and then killed. And we all know this. Look at the armpit. And the directions I take, depending on what I paint. You see all that? Your painting directions and your brush strokes depend on the shapes of what you paint. So you all go back to live drawing, you take another 5 semesters of live drawing. And if anyone asks why, just blame it on me. And then when you are done with that, you do it again. Because that's also where the fun is for an artist. That's also where the fun is. The fun is into... Well, I'm not going to tell you where the fun is and where you have fun. That's not my point. But a big part of the fun is into understanding what we paint and using it to express things, but we need that understanding of how things work. Because when we create artwork, it's for it to be viewed, to be appreciated, to carry a vision. And so we need that kind of display of understanding of our subject for it to gain some validity. And take everything I'm saying right now with a grain of salt, because I'm thinking as I talk, really. But I think that's really part of the understanding brushstrokes is the best way to own the things that you paint, to make it personal. When we talk about, and again, we are all tired with the AI conversation, but what's always going to miss from AI generators is that understanding of movements, that decision making in the head of an artist, that story the artist want to tell, and the way the movement of the body itself is going to express it. When I think back about my illustration, my education, I had the chance to have a live drawing professor who was telling me, like, bring huge pieces of paper in class, and I was working with an easel and working on charcoal with big pieces of paper. It's funny because today I do a lot of sketches with my mechanical pencil on small format, but my education was a lot about almost incorporating my entire body into the movements I make on paper or on canvas. So no matter what I did after, and no matter how many hours I spend on my graphic tablet on a computer, which is very, very different than standing in front of an easel and moving in front of it. I always carry that with me. Even if I don't paint on massive canvas anymore, at least I understood very strongly the importance of the movement of the artist. Because no matter what, like, it comes from movement. It's movement. It's you moving in front of a graphic tablet or a piece of paper or whatever. It is you moving. And you cannot underestimate that movement. You must not. In fact, you must understand it, you must understand what's at play, and you must incorporate it in your practice. And anything I say past this is only going to interfere with the importance of what I just said, and it's going to blur the edge. And I want the edge to stay sharp so you can focus on it. So that's all I got. Now, is there any questions in the chat on stream? And is there any questions in the class? And obviously I will stay with my students a bit longer after I disconnect the stream, but if there is anyone who wants to add something or have a question or... All right, so I will turn off the stream, stay with my students, and I will see everyone next week.